what I love about Reason the most, man, is like if I'm playing some key work, if I'm doing keys, some chord progression, I'm building like a live field song. I'll build it in Reason because I want to sound like a live band because the the quantization in Reason is rock solid.
It is, man.
You don't really have to go back and play. I found that, I do everything in Studio One, but although Studio One is dope and a lot of people use it, and it's getting better, I found, man, that nothing is as solid like the Reason sequencer. I think that's the dopest feature of it have been since Reason 1.5. You start play a lot of different runs and with your keys and a lot of you building, it gives you back what you play.
Right.
Now Logic, y'all some different kind of y'all some different kind of people using Logic, because I bought Logic, I paid the $300 for it, and I think Studio One has spoiled me because I started, man, with Pro Tools. I have a hate relationship with Pro Tools, because when I started with Pro Tools, I did the LE version, right? And they only gave you 16 tracks.
Yeah.
And then you get 30. Well, you got 8 tracks simultaneously. Then you got 32 tracks. But then if you needed to expand that 32, you had to spend like another 1,000.
Wow.
To get 64. And then if you did, because at that time I was recording a lot of rappers, but then when I started recording singers, the problem that I had with Pro Tools is I had to stack my vocals and then bounce them out, bring them back in, stack them again and bounce them out, 30, 40, 50 times, whereas those jokers just could have unlocked the track and gave us all the tracks. Right? Mm-hmm. That's what took me to Studio One, because they gave everything in the box. When I started trying to use Logic, just some of the functionality, like I know a lot of industry cats, on labels, and they've been using Logic for years, man.
Wow.
It's a different kind of animal, man. That's just it's not user friendly. So talk about why it's not user friendly, Rick. Since you love Logic, talk about why it's not user friendly.
I think it's quite user friendly, man. Because where Pro Tools comes in, man, is like when you go and set up your tracks and everything, you gotta it's good to know how to set up your tracks, how to set up your auxiliaries and all that stuff. When you go into Logic and you set your stuff up, it does the routing for you. You know what I'm saying? So you don't have to do that. When you set up an auxiliary track, it does the routing for you. You know what I'm saying? So that's one thing about it. That's very user friendly. A lot of people make some hit music just off using stock Logic sounds. You know what I'm saying? Because they got some good sounds in there. And the thing is that Logic makes it easy for you to take the stock sounds that they have and tweak them. They have samplers and oscillators and stuff like that, where you can take a sound that already exists, or even take a wave file that you found offline and tweak it to make your own sound that nobody's ever even heard before. So it makes it even more user friendly like that. You know what I mean?
But the problem that we're facing right now, which I don't like, because I spent a lot of money in Logic because because of course I score film, I score music to film, nice. And I have to use Pro Tools when I score music to film. Obviously, right now, Studio One is trying to get into a little bit of the game, but they still got to kind of do a little bit more to the software so we can score with it. But I score in Pro Tools because when I need to bounce the picture down with sound, obviously I got everything, right?
Right.
But when it comes to Logic surround sound, I bought Logic to start doing surround sound instead of me having to do it in Pro Tools. But the question I want to ask you, when it comes to now that we have the Logic 10.4.7, you have to have minimum Catalina 10.14. OS 10.14, which is Catalina. And the problem, when you start upgrading, because I'm a Mac guy, I find the operator because I'm on High Sierra because I got a couple Macs here. One has High Sierra, one has Sierra, but all my functionality works, and I don't want to upgrade because I don't want my stuff to start working.
Right.
So now if I want to use Logic, now they have some other features in Logic, right? You got to go to 10.14. So how does that affect you?
Man, I still have an old copy of Logic that I use. I still use 9.0 and 11.0. I got two different computers. So when certain things don't work on the new Logic, where you got to upgrade, and like a lot of my Waves plugins didn't transfer to to that version. So I'll bounce stuff down to Wave file and then upload it into Logic 9 if I need to. You know what I'm saying?
So Demetrius just said, if you have zero experience in producing, what DAW would you all recommend? What about you, Rick? What would you recommend, Rick?
I would recommend Logic Pro. It does a lot of the work for you that somebody experienced that didn't go to school for. It'll be easier for them to because with Reason now you gotta know signal flow and stuff. You gotta be able to.
Now talk about the current learning curve in Logic, Rick. Don't make me throw a banana peel at you, bro. Talk about the learning. You got to mention that. What's the learning curve on Logic?
What
would you suggest? So basically, if someone, if you want to learn Logic, would you suggest that they go take a course on Udemy, learning Logic, learn the basics, functionality, right? Would you say yes to that?
Yeah.
Okay. I would say if you're new to producing, I would say Studio One, because Studio One is drag and drop. You don't have to, Studio One is really advanced, but it's very, very simple. You don't have to, especially when it comes to your VST instruments, you just drag them on the track and you just play. When you get ready to bounce your music down to MIDI, you just right click or hit Control and B, you bounce it down to audio. It's very, very user friendly, except now where Logic is better than if you're doing a lot of advanced work and you're doing a lot of movie stuff. I would say, Logic and Digi Performer 10, because a lot of the industry cats, man, that do a lot of movie work, they use those two platforms, so I would say, and obviously some people would say Reason, but the problem with Reason, if you're learning, it's good, but when you start mixing and mastering, it's just a little different. Because you got, when you're mixing and mastering, it's called mixing by the ears, and that's mixing by the numbers. So when you mix by the ears, when you look at your settings, if you're on a Windows system versus a Mac system, or if you mixing in Reason, you mixing in Logic, or you mixing in Studio One, you mixing by the ears, depending on the type of system that you have, that those numbers may not reconcile, right? You make the same compression that you're using on Reason may not be the same compression to get the same sound you're using on Logic or Studio One. That's called mixing by the ears. So then if you're strictly mixing by the numbers, you just going by a certain setting, there is going to be totally different. So you just got to know your DAW. So we got a couple questions in here. I see Ricky, Pastor Bennett came in here. So